On my graduation day, Mom handed me an envelope with $300 inside. "Grandma sent this for you," she said, smiling warmly. I hugged them both, grateful but a little disappointed it wasn't more, considering how much student debt I carried. 3 months later, Grandma visited unexpectedly. Over coffee, she leaned forward and asked, "So Dana, did the $15,000 I sent help with your loans?" My stomach dropped. I whispered, "I only got 300. Grandma's face went pale, then hardened into something I had never seen before. I sat frozen at the kitchen table with Grandma, my coffee growing cold between my trembling hands. The silence stretched between us like a chasm opening in the floor. Patricia, my grandmother, was 72 years old with a mind sharper than most people half her age. She had been an accountant for 40 years before retiring, and she was not someone who made mistakes about money. She pulled out her phone with deliberate movements, her jaw set in a way that made my heart race. "Look at this," she said, turning the screen toward me. There it was, clear as day. A bank transfer receipt dated 3 days before my graduation ceremony. $15,000 sent via wire transfer to my parents' joint account. The memo line read, "For Dana's graduation and student loans." My vision blurred at the edges. I read the receipt 3 times, hoping the numbers would somehow change, that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. But they remained stubbornly the same. $15,000. Not 300. 15,000. "I don't understand," I whispered, though somewhere deep inside, a horrible understanding was already beginning to take shape. Patricia's hands shook as she held her phone. Not from age or weakness, but from pure rage. "I sent this money 3 days before your graduation specifically so you could make a loan payment before the interest accrued on your student debt. I sold your grandfather's vintage car collection to get this money, Dana. The Mustang, the Corvette, the Thunderbird he restored with his own hands. It took me 2 years to save this much." The weight of her sacrifice crashed over me. Grandpa had died 4 years ago, and those cars had been his pride and joy. Every weekend of my childhood, I remembered watching him in the garage, carefully polishing chrome, talking to those cars like they were old friends. Patricia had sold them. For me, "I called your parents to confirm they'd pass it along." Patricia continued, her voice tight with control. "They assured me they would give it to you at the right moment. I trusted my own daughter completely." The last word broke slightly, revealing the hurt beneath her anger. My mind raced backward to graduation day. I replayed the morning in my memory, searching for clues I had missed. Mom and Dad had seemed nervous, I realized now. They'd avoided making eye contact with Grandma during the ceremony. I'd thought it was odd that Grandma didn't stay long at the graduation party at our house. She'd given me a quick hug, whispered congratulations, and left within an hour. At the time, I assumed she was tired. Now I understood she had expected to hear my thanks, my relief about the money. When I said nothing, she must have thought I was being strangely ungrateful. "We need to confront them," Patricia said, standing up with determined energy. "Right now." "Grandma, maybe there's an explanation," I said weakly, though I didn't believe my own words. My stomach twisted with dread and a growing sense of betrayal that felt like poison spreading through my veins. "There's an explanation." "All right," Patricia said grimly. "And we're going to hear it directly from Jennifer and Brad." We drove to my childhood home in Patricia's car. I'd moved back in with my parents temporarily after graduation to save money while I searched for a real job in my field. My communications degree had landed me a part-time retail position so far, nothing more. With $60,000 in student loan debt hanging over my head, living rent-free had seemed like the smart choice. Now that choice felt like a trap. My hands were sweating as I gripped the door handle. I tried desperately to think of innocent explanations. Maybe they'd put the money in a savings account for me as a surprise. Maybe they'd invested it and were waiting to tell me when it grew. Maybe the bank made an error. But none of these explanations made sense with the $300 they'd claimed was from Grandma. When we walked into the house, my parents were sitting on the couch watching a home improvement show on television. My mother, Jennifer, looked up with a smile that died the instant she saw Patricia's expression. My father, Brad, immediately became defensive. He stood up quickly, his body language shifting into something guarded and aggressive. "Mom, what's wrong?" Jennifer asked, her voice already trembling with what I now recognized as guilt, not concern. Patricia didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I want to know about the $15,000 I wired to your account for Dana's graduation." The room seemed to contract. Time slowed down. I watched my father's face transform from confusion to anger in seconds. "What are you talking about?" he said, his voice rising. "You never sent any money." "You must be confused, Patricia." The use of her first name instead of Mom struck me as strange, creating distance. "I'm not confused," Patricia said coldly, holding up her phone. "I have the bank receipt right here. $15,000, transferred to your joint account 3 days before graduation." My mother stood up, wringing her hands. "Mom, I think you might be misremembering. You only sent $300. We gave it all to Dana, didn't we, honey?" She looked at me pleadingly, as if willing me to support their lie. Brad stepped forward, his voice getting louder. "This is ridiculous. Patricia, I think you might be experiencing some memory issues. This happens at your age. Maybe we should schedule a doctor's appointment for you. Early dementia can cause financial confusion." I felt like I'd been punched. They were gaslighting both of us, right to our faces, claiming Patricia was senile and confused. My grandmother, who had balanced complex corporate accounts for decades, who still did the New York Times crossword puzzle in pen every morning. "Someone probably hacked your account," Brad continued, warming to his lie. "Identity theft is common with seniors. We should report this to the bank fraud department." Patricia's hand tightened on her phone. "The money was withdrawn in cash 2 days after I sent it. From your account. Your branch. That's not fraud, that's theft. Get out," Brad said suddenly, his voice hard and cold. "Get out before you upset yourself more, Patricia. You're clearly not thinking straight." The argument escalated. Brad's voice grew louder with each sentence. He physically moved toward Patricia in an intimidating way, using his size to loom over her. Jennifer started crying, playing the part of the concerned daughter dealing with a difficult mother. I stood in the middle of it all, unable to move or speak. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. These were my parents, the people who raised me, who came to my school plays and drove me to soccer practice, and helped me study for tests. And they were lying. Not just lying, but cruelly, systematically lying to cover up something unforgivable. "Dana, honey, you believe us, don't you?" Mom pleaded, reaching for my hand. "Your grandmother is confused. We would never steal from you." I pulled my hand away. The look of hurt that flashed across her face might have moved me an hour ago. Now it just looked like manipulation. "I saw the bank receipt," I said quietly. "The money was sent. Grandma's not confused." My father's face darkened. "So you're taking her side? Against your own parents? After everything we've done for you?" Patricia grabbed my arm gently. "We're leaving. Dana, get your things. You're not staying here another night." As we walked out, I heard Brad shout after us, "This isn't over. You're making a huge mistake, Dana. You'll regret this." The door slammed behind us, and I realized with terrifying clarity that everything I thought I knew about my family had been built on lies. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest bedroom at Patricia's house, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning through years of memories with new and horrible context. Every gift, every gesture, every moment I'd thought was love now felt suspect. I got up at 3 in the morning and opened my laptop. I needed to know if this was an isolated incident or part of something bigger. My hands shook as I logged into my email and bank accounts, searching through old messages and statements. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in chemicals. When I was 16, my Uncle Craig had sent me $500 for my birthday. I remembered the card, his handwriting telling me to save it for something special. My parents said I should put it in their safe for protection. They gave me $100 to spend and promised the rest was secure. I'd forgotten about it over the years. Now I realized I'd never seen that other $400. When I turned 18, my godmother sent a savings bond worth $1,000. My parents told me they'd deposited it in a college fund. I'd never thought to check. There was no college fund. I made a list, going back through every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation from middle school and high school. The discrepancies added up. Over 10 years, thousands of dollars from relatives had somehow shrunk by the time it reached me. At 7 in the morning, Patricia knocked softly on my door. "I've been up too," she said. I called the bank. They confirmed the transfer went through successfully. The money was withdrawn in cash 2 days after it hit Jennifer and Brad's account. All $15,000. "Why cash?" I asked. "So there's no paper trail showing what they spent it on," Patricia said grimly. "I've also called my lawyer, Arthur Brennan. We have an appointment this afternoon." "Grandma, I don't know if I can do this," I said, tears finally spilling over. "They're my parents." Patricia sat beside me and took my hand. "I know, sweetheart. And I'm so sorry, but they stole from you. They stole from me. And I guarantee we're not the only ones." She was right. Later that morning, I called my Uncle Craig. He was Jennifer's younger brother, a kind man who worked as a high school guidance counselor. When I explained what happened, he went silent for a long moment. "Dana, I need to tell you something," he finally said. "5 years ago, your parents asked to borrow $15,000 from me. They said you had a serious health issue that required treatment and their insurance wouldn't cover it. They said you were embarrassed and didn't want anyone to know, which was why you weren't asking yourself." My throat closed up. "I never had any health issue. I gave them the money immediately." Craig continued, his voice heavy with regret. "I told them to pay it back whenever they could. They never did. Never mentioned it again," she whispered. 3 years ago. Jennifer called me crying. She said Dana's college tuition had gone up unexpectedly, and she didn't know how they were going to pay. She asked to borrow $8,000. I'm a widow, living on Harold's life insurance and Social Security. That $8,000 was nearly my entire emergency fund. But I gave it to her because I thought it was for your education. I felt like I'd been struck. I had scholarships," I said. "My tuition was covered. I only took out loans for living expenses. She promised to pay me back within 6 months," Diane continued, tears running down her weathered face. When 6 months passed and I hadn't heard anything, I gently asked about it. Jennifer became hostile. She said I was making her feel bad during a difficult time. She stopped calling me, stopped visiting. We barely spoke for 2 years. I felt like I'd done something wrong by even asking about my own money. Craig slammed his hand on the table. "They used all of us. They used Dana's name to scam money from people who love her." Sarah, Craig's wife, was writing everything down. "We need to document all of this," she said. She was a paralegal, organized and methodical. Dates, amounts, any written evidence. Text messages, emails, bank records if you have them. The total came to at least $38,000 that we knew about, all stolen from family members using me as the excuse. And none of it had ever reached me. "I never knew," I said, my voice breaking. "I had no idea any of this happened. I would never have wanted you to sacrifice for me like this." "We know that, honey," Diane said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "That's why they lied. They knew you'd never go along with it." Craig pulled out his phone. "I have text messages. Jennifer thanked me for helping Dana through her medical crisis. I saved them because I thought they'd make me feel good someday. Knowing I'd helped my niece." His voice was bitter. "Now they just make me feel like a fool." Diane went home and returned an hour later with a handwritten note from Jennifer. A promised repayment schedule that had never been honored. Patricia printed out bank records showing the wire transfer and subsequent cash withdrawal. While we compiled evidence, my phone buzzed constantly. Jennifer was sending a mass text to extended family members, cousins and aunts and uncles I barely knew. "My mother is mentally unwell and turning family against me and Brad. Please pray for our family during this difficult time. My daughter has been manipulated into believing lies." More texts came. "Some people show their true colors in hard times. Never thought my own child would betray me like this." She posted vague messages on social media about family betrayal and ungrateful children. "Some distant relatives, People who didn't know the full story commented with support for her. Hearts and praying hands emojis filled her posts. The family was fracturing before my eyes. People were taking sides based on limited information and Jennifer's manipulative narrative. It felt like everything was spinning out of control. Then my phone rang. It was my cousin Madison, calling from 2 states away. She was 25, the daughter of my mother's cousin. We'd been close as children but drifted apart as adults. "Dana, I need to tell you something," she said without preamble. "6 months ago, your parents contacted mine. They asked to borrow $10,000. They said you'd been in a car accident and needed surgery. They said you were uninsured and too proud to ask for help yourself. 6 months ago, I'd been finishing my final semester of college, perfectly healthy, with health insurance through the university. No accident, no surgery. My parents didn't have the money." Madison continued. "Dad had just been laid off. But Mom felt so guilty. She cried for weeks, thinking about you suffering without help. I remember because it was right before Christmas and it ruined the whole holiday. Mom kept saying she wished they could help you. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the scope of the betrayal. Madison, I was fine, completely fine. There was no accident. I know that now," she said. "That's why I'm calling. After I saw your mom's posts on social media, I talked to my parents. We realized what really happened. Dana, they tried to scam us, and if they asked us, they probably asked other people too. People who might have said yes." She was right. How many other relatives had my parents approached? How many had given them money? How many were too embarrassed or confused to come forward now? I looked around Patricia's dining room at the faces of the people who had gathered, the people who believed me and supported me. But I also thought about all the family members who weren't there, the ones who believed Jennifer's lies or simply didn't want to get involved. My family was broken, and the worst part was that it had been broken for a long time. I was only now seeing the cracks. The next morning, Patricia and I met with Arthur Brennan in his office downtown. He was in his early 60s, with silver hair and a calm, measured way of speaking that immediately put me at ease. His office smelled like old books and coffee. Arthur reviewed every piece of documentation we'd brought. Bank transfers, text messages, handwritten notes, statements from family members. He read through everything carefully, making occasional notes on a yellow legal pad. "This constitutes fraud," he finally said, looking up at us. "Clear-cut fraud. Possibly also elder abuse, depending on how we frame Patricia's case specifically. You could press criminal charges." My stomach lurched. Criminal charges meant police, prosecutors, potentially jail time, against my own parents. "There's also the option of a civil lawsuit," Arthur continued. "That would focus on recovering the money rather than punishment. It would be expensive and time-consuming, and there's no guarantee you'd collect even if you won, especially if they've already spent everything." "What do you recommend?" Patricia asked. Arthur leaned back in his chair. "Honestly, family cases like this are messy. Very messy. If you pursue this legally, you need to be prepared for things to get ugly. Your daughter and son-in-law will fight back. They'll say terrible things. They'll try to destroy your credibility and Dana's. The extended family will be forced to take sides. Some will believe Jennifer and Brad's version of events, no matter what evidence you present. Is that something you're prepared for?" I thought about Jennifer's social media posts, the way she'd already started painting herself as the victim. I thought about my father's threats as we'd left their house. They weren't going to go quietly. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted. "They're my parents. I keep thinking about all the good memories, the way Dad taught me to ride a bike, how Mom stayed up with me when I had the flu. Are those things all lies too?" "No," Arthur said gently. "People are complicated. Your parents may have genuinely loved you in some ways while also being willing to exploit you in others. Those things can exist simultaneously. But that doesn't make what they did acceptable." Patricia put her hand on mine. "We don't have to decide today. Let's take some time to think." We left Arthur's office and went to a nearby diner for lunch. I picked at a grilled cheese sandwich, my appetite gone. Patricia watched me with concern. "I love them," I said quietly. Even after everything, I still love them. Does that make me stupid? It makes you human, Patricia said. They're your parents. You're allowed to have complicated feelings. My phone buzzed. Another message from Brad. You're destroying this family over money. Is that really what you want? We can work this out if you just come home and stop listening to your grandmother's paranoid delusions. Then Jennifer. I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. I sacrificed everything for you. How can you do this to me? Please, baby, come home. We can fix this. The messages kept coming, alternating between rage and fake apologies, between threats and manipulative guilt. I turned my phone off. Over the next few days, the harassment intensified. My parents showed up at Patricia's house twice, banging on the door and demanding to talk to me. The first time, Patricia called the police. By the time officers arrived, my parents had left. The second time, they stayed in their car across the street for 3 hours, just watching the house. It was terrifying. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I felt trapped in a nightmare. Then I found the letter. I was packing up more of my belongings from my parents' house while they were at work. Patricia came with me, both for support and as a witness. As I sorted through boxes in my childhood bedroom closet, an envelope fell out of an old yearbook. It was an acceptance letter from a prestigious private university in Boston. A full scholarship plus a living stipend. Dated 6 years ago, right before Id started college. My hands went numb. I didn't remember applying to this school. I definitely never saw this letter. Patricia, I whispered, holding it out to her. She read it, and her face went pale. They hid this from you. It'd gone to a state school. A good school, but not like this. It'd taken out loans for living expenses. If I'd gone to Boston with a full scholarship and stipend, I would have graduated debt-free. I might have had completely different career opportunities. My entire life path had been altered, and my parents had hidden it. I drove straight to their house, letter in hand, not caring that I'd promised Patricia I wouldn't confront them alone. I was beyond caution, beyond fear. I was furious. I barged in without knocking. They were both home, sitting at the kitchen table. Jennifer looked up, startled. Brad stood up quickly. What is this? I demanded, slamming the acceptance letter down on the table. The color drained from Jennifer's face. Brad reached for the letter, but I snatched it back. You hid my college acceptance. My voice was shaking. A full scholarship? Why would you do that? Dana, honey. Calm down. Jennifer started, but I cut her off. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. I went into $60,000 of debt because of you. I could have gone to one of the best schools in the country for free, but you hid it. Why? Brad's face hardened. Boston was too far away, too dangerous. You were too young to be that far from home. I was 18 years old. It was my decision to make, not yours. You don't understand, Jennifer said, tears starting to flow. We couldn't bear to have you so far away. We needed you close. The truth clicked into place with sickening clarity. You needed me close so you could keep using me, I said. If I'd gone to Boston, family members would have sent money directly to me. They would have visited me. They would have known I wasn't sick or having financial emergencies. I was your cover story, and you needed to keep me under control. Brad took a step toward me, his face dark with anger. Watch your mouth. You're accusing us of things you can't prove. I can prove the $15,000 from Grandma. I can prove the money from Uncle Craig and Aunt Diane. I can prove this letter existed and you never gave it to me. How much more proof do I need? If you keep pushing this, Brad said, his voice low and threatening, I will make your life hell. I'll tell everyone you forged those bank documents. I'll destroy your reputation in this town. You'll never get a decent job. I have friends in the right places, Dana. Friends who will believe me over you. Jennifer nodded, wiping her tears away with calculating precision. No one will believe you over your own parents. You'll just look like a troubled young woman making up stories for attention. I looked at them, really looked at them, and saw strangers. These weren't the people I thought I knew. Or maybe they were and I'd just been too blind to see it before. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm completely done with both of you. I walked out, got in my car, and drove back to Patricia's house. I didn't cry. I felt strangely numb, like I'd passed through some barrier into a place beyond tears. Patricia met me at the door. I'm calling Arthur, she said, taking one look at my face. We're not waiting anymore. We're filing the lawsuit, I nodded. The time for hesitation was over. The next week passed in a blur of legal consultations and family phone calls. Arthur Brennan filed a civil lawsuit on Patricia's behalf for the return of the $15,000 plus interest and legal fees. He also sent formal cease and desist letters to Jennifer and Brad regarding their harassment. The response was immediate and vicious. Brad left me a voicemail, calling me a ungrateful, lying piece of trash. Jennifer sent text messages at all hours, alternating between begging me to drop the lawsuit and accusing me of elder abuse against Patricia, claiming I was manipulating my sick grandmother for money. But I also received unexpected support. My former high school English teacher, Mrs. Holloway, called me. Dana, I heard what's happening, she said. I want you to know I believe you. About 8 years ago, your parents approached me at a parent-teacher conference. They asked if I could lend them $5,000 for a study abroad program you were supposedly doing. They said the school had lost your scholarship paperwork, and you'd miss the opportunity if they couldn't pay right away. I never studied abroad, I said, though I was no longer surprised. I know, something felt off about the whole request, so I declined. I said I'd be happy to write a recommendation letter to help you reapply for the scholarship instead. Your mother got very cold and left quickly. I always wondered about that. Now I understand. Mrs. Holloway wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, more people came forward. Mr. Anderson, our neighbor for 20 years, mentioned that Brad had borrowed his lawn equipment 5 years ago and never returned it. When Head asked about it, Brad claimed it had been stolen from their garage. The equipment was worth about $1,200. A woman from our church, someone I barely knew, called Patricia. She'd been part of a fundraising committee with Jennifer 3 years ago. Jennifer had collected nearly $2,000 in donations for a charity drive she claimed to be organizing for underprivileged youth. The fundraiser never happened. When asked about it, Jennifer said the charity had backed out and Shed returned all the money to donors. She hadn't. The woman had been too embarrassed to report it at the time, not wanting to cause trouble. The pattern was everywhere once I started looking. Small cons, constant manipulation, a trail of victims too guilty or confused or embarrassed to speak up. Meanwhile, I was trying to rebuild my life. I'd applied to several marketing firms in the area. One, a mid-sized company about 30 miles away, called me for an interview. The interview went well. I felt confident, prepared, hopeful for the first time in weeks, but then the hiring manager, a woman named Courtney, seemed to hesitate. Well, be in touch, she said. But her tone had shifted from warm to uncertain. 2 days later, I got a call from Courtney's assistant, a young woman named Emma. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, Emma said nervously. But I think you should know. We received a phone call yesterday from a man claiming to be a family friend. He said he felt obligated to warn us that you were unstable and dishonest. He said you'd had psychological problems and had been known to steal from employers. My blood ran cold. What was his name? He didn't give one, but the caller ID showed a local number. When I looked it up, it matched the address you'd listed as your current residence. My parents' house. Brad had called to sabotage my job opportunity. For what it's worth, Emma continued, it seemed suspicious to me. The timing was weird. And the things he said sounded more like someone with a grudge than a concerned friend. I thought you deserved to know. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Arthur immediately. They're actively trying to destroy my career. Document everything, Arthur said. Save that voicemail from Brad. Screenshot all the text messages. This helps build the case that they're acting maliciously. But the worst was yet to come. 3 days later, I received a call from my bank's fraud department. Miss Dana? "We're calling about suspicious activity on your account?" the representative said. "There was an attempt to access your account from an unauthorized device. Our security system blocked it, but we wanted to alert you." "What kind of attempt?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Someone tried to log in using your username and an old password. They failed security questions twice before the system locked them out. The IP address traces back to a location in your town." She gave me the address. It was my parents' house. "They tried to hack my bank account," I whispered after I hung up. Patricia's face was grim. "Call Arthur, now." The bank filed an official fraud report. The police became involved. What had started as a civil dispute over stolen money was now escalating into potential criminal territory. Arthur called with an update 2 days later. "With the attempted bank access, we have grounds for criminal prosecution. The bank's fraud report gives us leverage. I think we should offer your parents a settlement first, but with the explicit understanding that if they refuse, criminal charges will be filed." "What kind of settlement?" I asked. "Full repayment of all documented stolen funds. That's Patricia's $15,000, Craig's $15,000, Deanna's $8,000, $38,000 total. Well, structure it as a payment plan since they clearly don't have that much in liquid assets. But if they miss a payment or engage in any further harassment or fraud, the criminal charges move forward immediately." It was a reasonable offer, but I had no faith my parents would accept it. They'd proven over and over that they believed they were untouchable. That week, Thanksgiving was approaching. Normally, our extended family gathered at Patricia's house for the holiday. This year, no one knew what to do. Some family members wanted to maintain tradition, others said they couldn't sit at a table with Jennifer and Brad. My parents had sent messages to various relatives, insisting they'd done nothing wrong and that Patricia was experiencing dementia. The family was fractured, possibly beyond repair. And I was at the center of it. I spent Thanksgiving with Patricia, Uncle Craig, his wife Sarah, and Aunt Diane. We tried to make it festive, but grief hung over everything. We were mourning not just the money that was stolen, but the family we thought we had. The Friday after Thanksgiving, I got a message from my cousin Tyler. He was 17, Jennifer's nephew through marriage. We'd never been particularly close, but he reached out nervously via social media. "Dana, I need to tell you something. Last month, Aunt Jennifer and Uncle Brad came to our house. They asked my parents for $20,000. They said you'd been in a car accident and needed surgery. Last month, just weeks ago. Long after they'd been confronted about their theft. My dad was about to pull money out of his retirement account," Tyler continued. "But I overheard and I didn't believe them. I convinced my parents to call you first to check on you. When they did and you said you were fine, they realized something was wrong. They didn't give them any money. But they also didn't tell anyone about it. I convinced them to stay quiet because I was scared of what Uncle Brad would do. But now I feel really guilty. I should have said something sooner." They'd tried to scam Tyler's parents even after being caught. They'd learned nothing, felt no remorse. We're already looking for their next victim. I forwarded Tyler's message to Arthur. He called me within an hour. "This changes things," he said. "They committed attempted fraud after being confronted. This shows ongoing criminal intent. We present the settlement offer tomorrow, and if they refuse, we're going straight to the police with everything." I felt exhausted, emotionally drained beyond anything I'd ever experienced. But I also felt a strange kind of clarity. This had to end. One way or another, it had to end. Arthur Brennan sent the formal settlement offer to my parents' attorney the following Monday. Their lawyer was a friend of Brad's named Roger, someone who did mostly real estate closings and simple wills. He was in over his head with a case like this. But Brad had apparently hired him because he was cheap and loyal. The offer was straightforward. Repay all documented stolen funds totaling $38,000, plus Patricia's $15,000, for a total of $53,000. The payment would be structured over 5 years with automatic monthly deductions. In exchange, no criminal charges would be filed. They had 72 hours to respond. Roger called Arthur back within an hour. "My clients reject this offer. They maintain they've done nothing wrong and that your clients are either confused or lying. They intend to fight any lawsuit vigorously." Arthur had expected this, but it still landed like a blow. My parents had been given a way out, a chance to make things right without criminal consequences, and they'd chosen to keep fighting. They think we're bluffing, I said to Patricia after Arthur called with the news. Then they're about to learn we're not. Patricia replied, her jaw set with determination. That afternoon I went to my first therapy appointment. Patricia had insisted and offered to pay for it. The therapist, Dr. Helen Morrison, was in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner I appreciated. Tell me what's happening, she said simply. I told her everything. The stolen money, the hidden acceptance letter, the years of manipulation. As I talked, something broke loose inside me. I started crying and couldn't stop. All the tears I'd been holding back for weeks came flooding out. I feel like I'm mourning someone who died, I managed to say between sobs. Except they're not dead. They're just not who I thought they were. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Dr. Morrison said. You are mourning. You're grieving the loss of the parents you believed you had. That grief is real and valid, even though they're still alive. Over the next hour, she helped me understand that my feelings were complicated and contradictory, and that was okay. I could love my parents and be angry at them. I could grieve the relationship I thought we had while also protecting myself from further harm. The question isn't whether you love them, Dr. Morrison said. It's whether staying connected to them is healthy for you. Love doesn't obligate you to accept abuse. I left her office feeling raw but somehow lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged until that moment. Meanwhile, the legal process moved forward. Arthur filed the civil lawsuit officially. A court date was set for 6 weeks out. During the discovery phase, more evidence emerged that I hadn't even known about. Bank records showed that Brad and Jennifer's financial situation was a disaster. Credit cards maxed out, mortgage refinanced 3 times, a car repossessed 2 years ago. They'd been living beyond their means for years, constantly juggling debt and scrambling for cash. The $15,000 from Patricia had been spent within 3 days. Mostly cash withdrawals, untraceable. Arthur sat with me and Patricia, spreading the financial records across his desk. I can make a pretty good guess where this money went, he said. See these patterns? Cash withdrawals in these amounts, at these intervals? That's consistent with gambling. Gambling. I thought about the Las Vegas vacation they'd mentioned, which had seemed absurdly tone-deaf at the time. Thought about times over the years when Dad had been mysteriously upbeat followed by periods of angry stress. Thought about whispered arguments between my parents about money that would stop abruptly when I entered the room. We think Brad has a serious gambling problem, Arthur continued, and Jennifer has been enabling it, helping him hide it from everyone. A few days later, more people came forward with their stories. The hardware store owner, Mr. Peterson, said Brad owed him $900 for supplies he'd charged to an account and never paid. Jennifer's hairdresser was owed $300 from visits where Jennifer kept forgetting her wallet. The local dry cleaner had written off $200 in unpaid bills. Small amounts, but they added up, and they painted a picture of 2 people who believed the rules didn't apply to them, that they could take what they wanted without consequence. The town gossip was relentless. In a small Ohio community like ours, everyone knew everyone else's business, people whispered in the grocery store. Former friends of my parents suddenly had convenient memory losses about plans they'd made. Brad's co-workers at the county assessor's office started avoiding him. Then came the call from Helen. Helen Wagner, a woman I'd never heard of, contacted me through social media. I need to talk to you about your father, she wrote. We met at a coffee shop the next day. Helen was in her late 40s, attractive, with an air of quiet sadness about her. She ordered tea with shaking hands, and then told me a story that made my stomach turn. 20 years ago, she'd dated Brad. This was before he married Jennifer. They'd been together for 2 years, serious and talking about marriage. He told me he needed money for a business investment, Helen said, staring into her tea. A sure thing. He said he'd double the money in 6 months and we could use it for a down payment on a house. I gave him $7,000. Everything I'd saved working as a secretary. What happened? I asked, though I already knew. He disappeared. Broke up with me over the phone, said Head met someone else. I later found out Head started dating your mother. The $7,000 was gone. When I tried to get it back, he claimed it was a gift, not a loan. I had nothing in writing. I was so heartbroken and humiliated that I didn't pursue it. I moved to another state for a few years, tried to start over. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I saw your grandmother's lawsuit in the legal notices section of the newspaper, Helen said. I realized Brad never changed. Has been doing this his whole life, and I thought if you're going to court, it might help to show that this is a pattern spanning decades, not just a recent problem. I thanked her and immediately called Arthur. He was thrilled. This is exactly what we need, he said. A pattern of behavior stretching back 20 years. This shows the jury that Jennifer and Brad are career con artists, not parents who made a one-time mistake. But my parents weren't backing down. If anything, they escalated. Brad's employer, the county assessor's office, launched an internal investigation after receiving an anonymous tip about possible misconduct. Questions arose about whether Brad had used his position to access property records improperly or engaged in fraud related to his work duties. Jennifer's part-time job at a dentist's office ended abruptly. The official reason was budget cuts. But I later learned that parents bringing their children for appointments had started requesting different hygienists. Uncomfortable with the rumors about Jennifer, my parents were facing financial ruin and social ostracism. Their house was at risk of foreclosure due to missed mortgage payments. And rather than accept responsibility and try to make things right, they doubled down on their lies. 3 days before our scheduled court appearance, Jennifer showed up at Patricia's house alone. It was early evening, nearly dark. Patricia and I were making dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Jennifer standing on the porch. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. Patricia didn't want to let her in, but something about Jennifer's appearance made me hesitate. She looked broken. Please, I said to Patricia. Let me talk to her. You can stay in the room. Well, record it. Ohio is a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record the conversation without Jennifer's knowledge or permission. Patricia reluctantly agreed. She started a recording app on her phone and placed it on the coffee table. Then she let Jennifer in. My mother collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Dana, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat across from her, maintaining physical distance. Sorry for what specifically? Everything, Jennifer said, wiping her face with her hands. The money, the lies, using you, all of it. You're right about everything. Why? I asked. Why did you do it? Jennifer took a shuddering breath. Brad has a gambling problem. A serious one. Hez had it for years, long before we got married. But I didn't understand how bad it was until we were already married with a child. He promised He'd stop. He'd quit for a while, then start again. The debts piled up. I felt trapped. You could have left him, I said. I know, Jennifer whispered. I should have. But I was scared. Scared of being alone, of not having enough money, of what people would think. So I started helping him cover it up. Small lies at first, then bigger ones. And at some point, I crossed a line and couldn't go back. She looked up at me, her face ravaged by tears. I know this doesn't excuse anything. I know I can't fix what I've done. But I need you to know that I did love you. I do love you, even though I showed it in the most terrible, damaging way possible. You stole from me, I said, my voice hard. You stole from your own mother, your brother, your aunt. You hid my college acceptance letter. You tried to sabotage my job. You used my name to scam money from people for years. What part of that is love? None of it, Jennifer admitted. You're right. I destroyed everything that mattered to protect a man who wasn't worth protecting and a lifestyle we couldn't afford. I became someone I don't even recognize. What about Brad? I asked. Does he feel the same way? Jennifer's face hardened slightly. Brad thinks we can still win in court. He thinks if we fight hard enough, we can make everyone believe our version. He doesn't want me here. He'll be furious when he finds out I came. So why did you come? Because I can't do this anymore, Jennifer said. I can't keep lying. I can't keep destroying you to save myself. I wanted you to know the truth before the court date. I wanted you to hear it from me. Patricia spoke for the first time. Jennifer, is this a genuine confession, or are you trying to manipulate us into dropping the lawsuit? Jennifer looked at her mother, and something crumbled in her expression. I don't know, Mom. Honestly, I don't know anymore. Maybe I'm still trying to manipulate everyone. Maybe I've been doing it so long that I don't know how to be genuine. But what I said is true. All of it. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Jennifer stood up slowly. I'll testify, she said. In court. I'll tell the truth about everything. It's the least I can do. She walked to the door, then turned back. Dana, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't expect it. But I hope someday you'll understand that I did love you, even though I failed you in every possible way. After she left, Patricia and I sat in stunned silence. We had Jennifer's confession, recorded. It changed everything. Do you believe her? Patricia finally asked. I think she believes herself right now, I said carefully. Whether she'll actually follow through is another question. Arthur was ecstatic when we sent him the recording. This is a game changer. With Jennifer's admission on record, Brad has no defense. We can push for a settlement with much better terms. But I felt strangely empty. My mother's confession should have brought relief, but instead, it just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that this was what it took to break through her lies. Sad that even her apology felt uncertain, like she wasn't entirely sure if she meant it. The next morning, we learned that Brad was furious about Jennifer's visit. Head apparently shouted at her for hours. Neighbors heard the fight. One called the police for a welfare check, though officers found no evidence of physical violence. The cracks in their united front were showing, and I wondered if maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was finally approaching its end. The morning after Jennifer's confession, Arthur Brennan called with news. I'm preparing a new settlement offer. With Jennifer's recorded admission, we have significantly more leverage. I'm going to present Brad with a choice: accept full repayment terms, or face criminal prosecution with Jennifer as a potential witness against him. The new offer was more detailed and unforgiving. Full repayment of $53,000 over 5 years, with steep penalties for missed payments. Brad and Jennifer would need to sell their house and downsize immediately. The first payment of $10,000 would be due within 30 days, coming from the house sale proceeds. Monthly payments of $750 would continue for the remaining term. If they missed a single payment, criminal charges would be filed immediately, and the full balance would become due. Roger, their attorney, called Arthur back that afternoon. His voice was strained. My clients need more time to consider. They have 48 hours, Arthur said firmly. After that, we proceed with criminal prosecution. Those 48 hours felt like an eternity. I couldn't eat or sleep. I kept my phone off to avoid the barrage of messages I knew would be coming. Patricia and I stayed close to home, both of us on edge. Dr. Morrison, my therapist, helped me process what was happening. Whatever they decide, you've done everything right, she told me during an emergency phone session. You've set boundaries. You've demanded accountability. That takes incredible strength. It doesn't feel like strength, I admitted. It feels like I'm destroying my family. You're not destroying anything, Dr. Morrison said gently. You're revealing what was already destroyed. There's a difference. On the second day of waiting, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I recognized Brad's handwriting. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Dana, you think you've won, but you haven't. You'll never prove any of this in court. I'll make sure everyone knows you're a liar and a manipulator who turned your mentally ill grandmother against your own parents. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. Some mistakes can't be undone. Think carefully about what you're destroying. Dad, I showed it to Arthur. He immediately filed it as evidence of harassment and witness intimidation. Hez digging himself deeper. Arthur said with grim satisfaction. That evening, Roger called Arthur. My clients accept the settlement terms. I felt dizzy when Arthur relayed the news. It was over. Really over. They'd agreed. There's more. Arthur continued. Jennifer wants to speak with you. She says she has information you need to know before the settlement is finalized. She's willing to come to my office with Roger present if you and Patricia are there. We arranged to meet the next morning. I barely slept that night, wondering what Jennifer could possibly have left to tell me. At Arthur's office, Jennifer looked even worse than she had at Patricia's house. Brad wasn't with her, and according to Roger, had refused to attend. Jennifer sat across from us, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I have things to tell you that aren't in the settlement documents. Things you deserve to know. She took a deep breath. The gambling addiction is worse than I said. Brad has been banned from 3 casinos in the neighboring state. He lost our retirement savings, all $52,000, over the course of 2 years. That's when the borrowing from family started. We were desperate, drowning in debt. Why didn't you ask for help? Patricia asked, her voice tight. Pride, Jennifer said simply. And shame. And fear that if people knew how bad things were, they'd try to make me leave Brad. I wasn't ready to admit my marriage was a failure. So you sacrificed your daughter instead, Patricia said coldly. Jennifer flinched but nodded. Yes, that's exactly what I did. And the college letter from Boston wasn't the only one. There were 3 others, schools in California, New York, and North Carolina, all offering significant financial aid or scholarships. I hid them all, because I couldn't handle you being far away. I told myself it was for your protection, but really it was for mine. I needed you close so I could keep using you as an excuse. The room seemed to tilt. 3 other letters. 4 opportunities stolen from me. Why are you telling me this now? I managed to ask. Because you should know the full truth, Jennifer said. And because I'm leaving Brad, I've filed for separation. I'm moving in with my friend Carol temporarily. I wanted you to know that I'm trying to change, even though I know it's too late. Roger shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This was clearly news to him, too. The house is being listed today, Jennifer continued. We'll have the first settlement payment within 3 weeks. Probably sooner. I'm going back to school to finish my nursing degree. I started it years ago but dropped out when I married Brad. I have 2 years left. I'm 47 years old and starting my life over from nothing. What about Brad? Patricia asked. Hez on his own? Jennifer said, a note of steel entering her voice for the first time. I spent 25 years protecting him, lying for him, destroying relationships for him. I'm done. Hez attending court-mandated gambling addiction treatment as part of the settlement. Whether he actually changes is his problem now, not mine. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy for her, for the mess she'd made of her life. But mostly I just felt numb. I don't expect forgiveness, Jennifer said, looking directly at me. I don't even expect you to believe that. I'm serious about changing. But I needed you to know that I understand what I did. I understand what I cost you, and am going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better, even if you never see it. She stood up, nodded to Roger, and left. The settlement was finalized that afternoon. Brad and Jennifer signed all the documents. The house went on the market the next day, priced aggressively low for a quick sale. 3 weeks later, the first payment arrived. $10,000. Deposited into Patricia's account exactly as agreed. She distributed the money to the family members who'd been scammed, keeping her $15,000 to be paid out over time with the subsequent payments. Here, Patricia said, handing me a check. $15,000, what was always meant for you. I stared at the check, unable to quite believe it was real. This money represented my grandfather's car collection, Patricia's sacrifice, and finally, justice. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. For everything. For believing me. For fighting for me. Always. Patricia said, pulling me into a hug. Always. I used $10,000 to pay down my highest interest student loans. The relief was immediate and profound. I put the remaining $5,000 in savings, an emergency fund I'd never had before. But even as I deposited the check, I couldn't shake a feeling of sadness. I'd gotten my money back, but I'd lost my parents. Or maybe I'd never really had them at all. Maybe I'd only had the illusion of parents, and all I'd lost was the illusion. 2 weeks after the settlement, I got a job offer. The marketing firm where I'd interviewed, the one Brad had tried to sabotage, called me back. Emma, the assistant who'd warned me about Brad's call, had vouched for my character to the hiring manager. They wanted to hire me as a junior account coordinator. The salary wasn't amazing, but it was in my field, with benefits and room for growth. I started the job 3 weeks later. On my first day, I felt like I was finally beginning my real adult life, the one that should have started after graduation. Brad and Jennifer sold their house at a loss, but it sold quickly. They moved into separate apartments on opposite sides of town. The monthly settlement payments continued like clockwork, automatically deducted from their accounts. Brad kept his warehouse job. He attended gambling addiction meetings as required, though rumors suggested he wasn't taking them seriously. Jennifer enrolled in nursing school and threw herself into her studies with an intensity that surprised everyone. The extended family slowly began to heal. Uncle Craig hosted a dinner for those of us who'd stood together through the lawsuit. We acknowledged the pain but also the strength we'd found in each other. "We're building something new," Craig said, raising a glass. "A family based on honesty and trust, not obligation and guilt. That's something worth celebrating." Patricia became even more important to me. We talked every day, had dinner together several times a week. Our bond, tested by fire, emerged stronger than ever. But I still struggled. In therapy, Dr. Morrison helped me work through the complex grief of losing parents who were still alive. The anger, the sadness, the betrayal, the strange, unwanted sympathy for Jennifer's situation. The complete absence of feeling anything for Brad except wariness. Healing isn't linear, Dr. Morrison reminded me. Some days you'll feel strong, other days you'll feel lost. That's normal. 6 months after the settlement, I was promoted at work to junior account manager. My boss, Courtney, pulled me aside after the announcement. "You've shown remarkable resilience," she said. "Coming in here and proving yourself despite everything you were dealing with personally. That's the kind of character we value." I'd also started dating someone. Austin was a middle school science teacher I'd met through mutual friends. He was kind, patient, and steady in a way I desperately needed. When I told him about my family situation on our third date, expecting him to run for the hills, he just took my hand. "That must have been incredibly hard," he said simply. "I'm glad you got through it. No judgment, no drama, just acceptance." It was more healing than I could have imagined. 8 months after the settlement, I stood in Patricia's kitchen making Thanksgiving dinner together. Just the two of us this year, and it felt right. Peaceful in a way holidays never had before. "I got an email from your mother yesterday," Patricia said carefully, watching my reaction. My hands paused mid-chop on the carrots I was preparing. What did she want? She sent me her first semester nursing school grades. All As. Said she wanted me to know she's serious about changing. Patricia set down the spoon she'd been using to stir gravy. "She didn't ask me to tell you. Didn't ask for anything, actually. Just shared. I didn't know how to feel about that. Jennifer had made all her settlement payments on time. I knew because Patricia kept me updated. Jennifer had also kept her distance, not reaching out to me directly even once. Do you think people can really change? I asked. Patricia considered this seriously. Some can. Whether Jennifer is one of them, only time will tell. But her changing or not changing doesn't affect you anymore. You're free from that drama now. She was right. I was free. For the first time in my life, I was building something that was entirely mine, based on choices I made without my parents' manipulation or control. The doorbell rang. Austin arrived with flowers and a homemade pie, greeting Patricia with a warm hug. Over dinner, we laughed and told stories. Austin shared funny anecdotes from his classroom. Patricia told us about her volunteer work at the local library. I talked about the big marketing campaign I was helping coordinate at work. It was normal. Beautifully, wonderfully normal. And I realized that this was what I'd been fighting for. Not just the money, though that mattered, but the right to have a life built on truth. To be surrounded by people who valued honesty and integrity. Later that week, I received an email from Brad. My first instinct was to delete it without reading, but curiosity won out. It was short, awkward, clearly painful for him to write. Dana, I know I don't have the right to contact you. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take accountability without expecting anything in return. I stole from you and from the family. I lied to you for years. I tried to control your life for my own benefit. I sabotaged your opportunities. I was a terrible father. You deserved better. I'm working on my gambling addiction, but that doesn't excuse what I did. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy. You don't need to respond to this. Brad, I read it 3 times, searching for manipulation or hidden agendas. It seemed genuine. But with Brad, I could never be sure. I didn't respond. I didn't owe him that, but I didn't delete it either. I saved it in a folder, acknowledging it without engaging. That weekend, I volunteered at a local nonprofit that helped young adults with financial literacy. When the coordinator asked if I'd be willing to share my story anonymously to help others recognize financial abuse, I agreed. Standing in front of a group of young women, most around my age, I told them about red flags to watch for. Parents who insist on controlling your bank accounts, family members who use you as an excuse to borrow money from others, people who hide important mail or documents from you. The isolation tactics, the guilt trips, the way financial abuse often accompanies emotional manipulation. The hardest part wasn't the money, I told them. It was accepting that the people who claimed to love me most were actually using me. But I want you to know that you can survive that betrayal. You can fight back. You can build a life on your own terms. After the presentation, several young women came up to me privately. One was crying. My mom does exactly what you described, she whispered. I thought I was crazy for feeling suspicious. You're not crazy, I assured her. Trust your instincts, and if you need help, there are people and resources available. Helping others gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't expected. My pain wasn't wasted if it could protect someone else. As winter turned to spring, Austin and I grew closer. He met Patricia, and they adored each other immediately. He understood family complications. His parents had divorced messily when he was young. He knew about boundaries and healing and the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. You don't have to forgive them, he told me one evening as we walked through the park. You don't have to have a relationship with them ever again if you don't want to. Whatever you choose is valid. I appreciated that he never pushed me toward any particular decision. He just supported wherever I was in my process. My career continued to grow. I was given more responsibilities at work, building genuine skills and confidence. The salary increases helped me continue paying down my student loans aggressively. Within a year of the settlement, I'd paid off $20,000 of debt. It felt like breathing freely for the first time. Patricia and I started new traditions. Sunday brunch at a local cafe, monthly trips to the theater or concerts. We talked about everything. Our conversations no longer shadowed by secrets or manipulation. She told me stories about her life I'd never heard before, about her own struggles and triumphs. I realized I was getting to know her as a person, not just as my grandmother. One afternoon, about a year after the settlement, Patricia showed me something. I've been thinking about your grandfather's cars, she said. The ones I sold to help you. Grandma, you don't have to explain. I started, but she held up her hand. I want to show you something. She pulled out an old photo album. Pictures of Grandpa with his cars, beaming with pride. He would have been so proud of you, Dana. For standing up for yourself. For demanding honesty. For building a good life despite everything. Those cars meant a lot to him. But you know what meant more? Integrity. Doing the right thing even when it's hard. If He'd been alive, he would have sold those cars himself to help you. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at the photos. I miss him. Me too, Patricia said softly. Every day. But he left us both something more valuable than vintage cars. He taught us what it means to live with honor, and you've honored his memory by fighting for truth. That evening, I wrote in my journal, something Dr. Morrison had encouraged me to do. I wrote about the journey from graduation day to now, about the betrayal and the pain and the horrible discoveries, but also about the strength I'd found, the people who stood by me, the new life I was building. I wrote, I learned that family isn't just blood, it's who shows up with integrity. It's who tells you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. It's who fights beside you instead of against you. I lost my parents, but I gained something more valuable: self-respect, and a family built on honesty instead of lies. 18 months after the settlement, Jennifer completed her nursing degree. I heard about it through Patricia. Jennifer had sent her mother an invitation to the ceremony, but hadn't expected anyone to come. Patricia went, sitting in the back. She told me about it afterward. She looks healthier, Patricia said. More at peace. She's working at a hospital now, night shifts in the ER. She's paying her settlement obligations without complaint. Whether it will last? I don't know, but today she seemed genuinely proud of herself for finishing something she started. Are you going to have a relationship with her again? I asked. I don't know, Patricia admitted. I'm not ready to trust her. Maybe I never will be, but I can acknowledge that she's trying, even while maintaining boundaries. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. I thought about that a lot. Could I acknowledge Jennifer's efforts without letting her back into my life? Could I recognize that people might change while still protecting myself from potential future harm? Dr. Morrison assured me that yes, I could hold both truths simultaneously. Brad, from what I heard, was less successful in his recovery. Head completed his required gambling addiction treatment, but there were whispers that Head been seen at casinos again. Head lost his warehouse job after missing too many days. He was surviving on part-time work, and his settlement payments were being automatically deducted from his account, often leaving him with very little to live on. I felt no satisfaction in his struggles, but I also felt no guilt. Head made his choices. Id made mine. 2 years after the settlement, on a sunny afternoon in June, I signed a lease on my own apartment. Not a room in someone's house or a temporary situation, but my own one-bedroom apartment with a view of a small park. It was modest but entirely mine. Austin helped me move in, along with Patricia and Uncle Craig. We painted the walls a soft blue Id chosen myself. We assembled furniture. We hung pictures. At the end of the day, we ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my living room, exhausted and happy. To new beginnings, Patricia said, raising a can of soda in a toast. To family, Craig added. To Dana, Austin said, smiling at me. For building the life you deserve. As I looked around at these people who'd stood by me, supported me, believed in me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pure, uncomplicated joy. That night, alone in my new apartment, I stood by the window looking out at the park. I thought about where I'd been 2 years ago, on my graduation day, accepting an envelope with $300 and thinking I understood my life. I'd been so wrong, but in the wreckage of those illusions, I'd found something real. I'd found my own strength. I'd learned to set boundaries. I'd discovered who my real family was. And I'd built a life that was mine, truly and completely mine. The road ahead wasn't completely clear. I still had student loans to pay. I still sometimes woke up in the middle of the night with anxiety about my parents and their choices. I still struggled with trust in new relationships. Healing wasn't simple or linear. But I was healing, and that was enough. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to the nonprofit coordinator. I'd like to volunteer again. To share my story with more groups. I think it might help people. The response came quickly. We'd love to have you. Your story gives people hope. It shows them they can survive betrayal and come out stronger. Hope. That was what I wanted to give. Because if my pain could help even one person recognize financial abuse, set boundaries with manipulative family members, or find the courage to fight for their own truth, then something good had come from all of this. I thought about what I'd tell someone facing a similar situation. What wisdom had I gained from this nightmare? I'd learned that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest. But I also learned that you don't have to accept that hurt as your identity. You can fight back with truth, with boundaries, with the law, if necessary. You can build a new family from the people who prove themselves trustworthy. And most importantly, you can forgive yourself for not seeing the truth sooner. I spent months blaming myself, thinking I should have known. But manipulation is designed to be invisible. What matters is what you do once you see it clearly. I chose myself. I chose truth. I chose a future where I'm not defined by their choices but by mine. As I got ready for bed in my own apartment, in my own space that no one could take from me, I felt a deep sense of peace. Justice had been served. Not perfectly, maybe. Not in a way that erased all the pain, but in a way that allowed me to move forward with dignity. I pulled out my laptop and opened a document. I started writing my full story. Not for publication, but for myself. To process it, to understand it, to claim it as mine. And as I wrote, I realized that this was the final step in my healing. Taking control of my own narrative. Deciding what this experience meant and who I would become because of it. I was Dana. I was 26 years old. I'd survived betrayal by the people who should have protected me. I'd fought back and won. I'd built a life based on honesty and integrity. And I was going to be okay. More than okay. I was going to thrive. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who hurt you? How did you find the strength to choose yourself when it mattered most? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to hear more stories about resilience, healing, and finding strength in difficult times. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about financial abuse or family manipulation, please share this with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you deserve honesty, respect, and a life built on truth. That's always worth fighting for. Take care of yourselves and remember, you're stronger than you know.